Hey everybody, this is Lee Bryant, Mrs. Hammond from the movie Airplane, and you're listening to Tommy Throwback Kovac on Splat from the Past. Tommy never vomits during an interview at home.
Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming one of the T-Birds from the classic, the immortal classic, I should say, Grease, Doody himself, Barry Pearl. Yes, I'm having Doody himself, Barry Pearl, on the show today to talk about, you know, what it was like touring with the company back in the day on the national tour, making the magical movie, and of course other roles he did, like CPO Sharkey with Don Rickles and Avenging Angel, cult classic. Oh boy, I love that movie. And many others. And it's going to be great. It's been a long time coming. I've been trying to get him on for a long time now, but finally going to make it happen. So, here is my interview with Barry Pearl. Hey, Barry.
Hey, Tommy.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay, how are you?
I am spectacular. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, it's such an honor to have you on finally.
Thank you. I'm sorry it took so long.
That's okay. Everyone gets busy.
Indeed. Busy is my middle name, thank goodness.
Yeah. So, going back in time, did you gravitate toward acting early on?
Very much so. I grew up in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I was always active in community theater, and prior to that, too, in school plays and such. But my parents, who had been divorced since I was a year old, my mother actually supported my aspirations, as did my Aunt Rose, my Aunt Frida, and my Aunt Mim. And not helicopter relatives, but they were there to support and promote those aspirations, those desires to perform. And when I was, I guess I was about 6 or 7 years old, my mom had enrolled me in a tap dance class, Miriam Menser's tap dance school. And every year, at the end of every year, they would put on a review. And because I was the youngest little boy, and there was a little girl by the name of Maxine Gilman, we were of the same age, they paired us together, and we were these cute little tap dancing kids. They would build the review around us. So I must have done about 2 or 3 of those, and that kind of was the bug that bit me a little bit. And from there, after my mom saw that I was really serious about this, she got a lead on how to get me involved in the community theater there, Lancaster Little Theater. And I had done a couple of productions at Lancaster Little Theater, and then eventually 2 productions at the Franklin and Marshall College Green Room Theater, one of which was with the late Roy Scheider of Jaws fame. Remember, he played the sheriff in Jaws.
Right.
And he was playing Richard III, so I played opposite him in that. And then along comes a production of Dark at the Top of the Stairs that was being done at the Fulton Opera House, now the Fulton Theater, one of the oldest theaters in the country. And they had professionals from New York come in to do most of the roles, and I played the role of Sonny Flood. And there was a gentleman by the name of Charles E. Miller, Chuck Miller, who was an aspiring playwright from New York, who, in order to pay the rent, took a job. Let me just let that go. Hold on one second here.
Okay.
I'm just sorry to interrupt this fascinating story, but I just turned my ringer off of my cell phone. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So Chuck was looking to pay the rent, as aspiring playwrights oftentimes have to do, and he took a job running lights for this production of Dark at the Top of the Stairs in Pennsylvania. They jobbed him in. And he took a liking to me and my mother, and he told my mom, one of these days I'm going to get your son on Broadway. Now, this is 1959. I was 9 years old. And 2 years later, summer of '61, I happened to be down at my family's farm in New Providence, Pennsylvania. My aunt and uncle, Uncle Buzz and Aunt Frida's farm, and now my cousin Roxanne's farm. She inherited it. I was down there, and my mom comes driving up saying, "We're going to New York. You're doing a Broadway show." Now, that was the power of positive thinking because I hadn't gotten the role yet. But as far as I was concerned, based on how things like that rolled out in my hometown, you auditioned. Sometimes you didn't even audition. You just got the gig. I thought I had it. Little did I know there were like 250 kids that had auditioned for this, and kids that were already in the union and Actors Equity. So we traveled into New York, I want to say probably the following day, and by train. And Chuck coached me in singing the song "There's No Business Like Show Business." I remember we rehearsed in the basement of the Lambs Club, which is kind of like the Friars Club in New York. And the following day, I went in and sang for Marge and Gower Champion. Gower had directed Bye Bye Birdie at the Schubert Theater, and I went on the stage there and sang that song, and they asked me if I had anything else prepared. I didn't, so they had me sing Happy Birthday. And the next thing you know, I got the gig. And pretty much never went home. I mean, we went back and forth. Certainly we had family there, and my mom closed up our apartment there and we moved to Midtown Manhattan when I was 11 years old and enrolled in Professional Children's School, which is a school that's designed for kids that are in the business or whose parents are in the business and who travel. So I went to school through correspondence, which was tough that first year.
Yeah.
But went out on the road. I actually did the last month of Birdie on Broadway. Gretchen Weiler had already replaced Cheetah Rivera, and Gene Rayburn of Match Game fame had replaced Dick Van Dyke, and then eventually Dick Patterson replaced Gene Rayburn. So I went out on the national tour with Gretchen Weiler and Dick Patterson, and we toured for the better part of '62, ending in the spring of '62, and then I did the Las Vegas version with Peter Marshall and Elaine Dunn in the summer of '62, and then came back to New York. Now, by this time, I'm ensconced in New York, and I'm there. You know, I'm doing it now as a young 11, 12-year-old kid, and had auditioned for the pre-Broadway production of Oliver. I had broken my arm, though, in the family's farm. I got on my cousin's Shetland pony bareback, and I fell off and broke my arm. Nevertheless, auditioned for Oliver, didn't get the gig, but about 2 months later, they were replacing two kids, again, before coming into New York. So I went back and auditioned and got that gig. Went out and met them, I want to say, in Toronto, pre-Broadway, and then came into Broadway with it. So there were now two original Broadway shows under my belt, Bye Bye Birdie and Oliver. Although I was in the original production of Birdie, I didn't create the role of Randolph McAfee. It was Johnny Borden who was doing the role before I came in to do it, but he was leaving to do Milk and Honey, Molly Pecan, and that's what left that role open for me to come in and audition and eventually get that role. And I wound up working with Johnny in the original production of Oliver. We were both workhouse boys in Fagin's gang. We doubled as each, and that sort of was the beginning of the career. And graduated from a professional children's school in '69, and then went to Carnegie Mellon University to get my BFA in drama. And then the Grease thing happened just before I graduated. I got cast in the national tour of Grease. That's a whole other story I can bore you with. But so that to answer your question in a long-winded way, it brings us from 61 up through 73 at this point. Any other questions, Tommy?
Wow, that's incredible. That was a great time for Broadway, I can imagine. So at Carnegie Mellon, were you there the same time as Michael McKean and David Lander?
No, I believe they preceded me. Well, you know what? I'm not sure how old they are. I was there between 69 and 73, graduated in 73. And they weren't there then. They may have come in after. No, they probably came in before me. I was there during the golden age of Carnegie. They call it the golden age when Godspell was created.
Yeah.
I was there for the first performance of Godspell, which was in, I guess that was in either 69 or 70. So, they weren't around then. I went to school with the likes of Ted Danson, Judith Light, and who else? This is subsequent to the Bochco days.
Sherry Belafonte.
That she was there. I want to say she might have been there after me, but yes, she was. She also Blair Underwood went there. What's her name from Urban Cowboy?
Deborah Winger.
No, not Winger. It was it's Crimes of the Heart. I'm thinking. Oh my goodness. I can't think of her name. Who starred in Crimes of the Heart? Oh my goodness. She reminds me a little bit of Deborah Winger. Maybe what? No, Holly Hunter. That's
Holly Hunter. Yeah.
Holly Hunter was there after me, and just so many. Zach Quinto, of course, he was there way after me, and they've spawned a lot of talented folks.
Oh yeah, Tom Savini was there. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of people.
A lot of folks. And I go back. I've been going back for the last 6 years because I've been teaching film arts to special needs folks all across the country. And when we hit Pittsburgh, I've occasionally gone up to the campus, and it's changed so much. It's a beautiful campus. Tough school to get into and exceedingly expensive. And when I went to school there, it was $4,000 a year. It's like $60,000 now.
Wow.
That's outrageous. And that's not unlike, most schools, most private schools like that across the nation. It's just outrageous.
Yeah.
But it's what it is, and I wouldn't trade those 4 years for anything. I had a great time.
Oh, that's insane. That's great that you do that, though. Yeah, I have Asperger's syndrome. I was in special needs environment throughout school and stuff, so I admire that greatly.
I teach through Joey Travolta's Inclusion Film Company.
Oh, yeah.
Joey is one of John's older brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They asked me to come along, like I said, 6 years ago, and I've been traveling with them across the country. We start in the spring, and we do camps in, we just added Vero Beach, but we've done Arkansas, we've done Michigan. Usually we do 2 camps in Northern California. It's Fairfield and Dublin, and then we head over to Pittsburgh, and then end up in Tenafly. And then in between that, we do in the spring we do Vero Beach. We've done Lodi. It's just a great program. And during the fall, they do a red carpet event where they exhibit the films that we do. We go into a city for 2 weeks each, and there are 3 of us teachers. Right now it's Roger Welch, myself, and Matt Landers. And we've got about 15 to 20 campers in the class, and we each put together a 7-minute film and a 1-minute PSA or commercial. And we travel with the full camera crew and editing person, our editor, Chris Dubois, and his associate, Paul Gomez. They're just brilliant. And they edit together all the films, and then we present them in the fall in each of the cities in red carpet events with wraparounds. So it's not like you just go in and watch these 3 films. There are wraparounds. For instance, the theme, the very first time I worked with them, we were doing a thing called Mr. Joey's Block based on Mr. Rogers. So they would build a set that looked like a Mr. Rogers basement, and they would bring 2 representatives from each of the class in one at a time, and he'd joke around with them and ask them questions about the films, and that's how they would get into it. Well, let's take a look at this film of yours. And you go to a green screen, and the film appears, and then they come back and ask more questions and such. And then one year we did take off on Shark Tank called Shark Bite, where the representatives had to sell their film ideas to a group of sharks, and that's how the films were exhibited. And we do premises. Don't judge a book by the cover with the premise. And last year, and I think the year before that, we did what they called the Bizarre Zone, which was based on the Twilight Zone. So you cast a Rod Serling type character that intros the story, and then you do this bizarre story with the premise of don't judge a book by its cover, and then you have an outro where the Rod Serling character comes back in and says, and this is the story from the Bizarre Zone. So again, it's not just like going in and watching three 7-minute films and 3 commercials. It's all built around a particular premise or theme, and they love it. The campers, they get at the red carpet events. There are limousines, and they dress up, and they're Klieg lights, and it's a whole big to do. And what it does for the campers, for the people on the spectrum, is just phenomenal. How they come out of themselves, how they're able to express themselves through the arts. And Joey took a script called Carol of the Bells and directed a film that's now playing the festivals about this young man played by R.G. Middies, who used to be the kid on Breaking Bad, looking for his biological mother, who turns out to have Down syndrome, and that whole story. Starring Lee Purcell, Donna Mills, and Donna Pascal. It's a wonderful film. In fact, they just showed it down in San Diego. Did great guns there. They're going to be doing it all across the country as it rolls out. I want to say Lionsgate. I think it was Lionsgate that might have picked it up. Oh, no, Comcast. I think it is.
Comcast.
Forgive me for not remembering exactly. But if you go to inclusionfilms.com, it's all on there. And in fact, most of our films are on there through the years too that we've done. So it's an incredible experience for everybody involved. I learn just as much as the campers do every year. So it's a different path than I had expected to be on at this point, and I'm so thankful. Just great people all around.
Yeah,
so that's been what I've been doing for the summers these last 6 years, along with continuing to act and direct as well.
Yeah, God bless you guys. That is just amazing. That's God's work there, I'll tell you.
You bet it is. You bet it's what you know. I mean, from your personal experience with the syndrome. You know, we work with Asperger's and Downs and even blind and deaf folks. It's quite something.
Yeah.
What we're able to do, and what they are able to do, what they're able to accomplish. The abilities that they have, as opposed to their disabilities. The abilities are what are framed, and they just dig it, and it works beautifully.
Yep. So when you were in the national tour of Greece, who was in the cast when you started?
Well, what's interesting, I'll tell you that story. When I was going to Carnegie, there were some transfer students who had gone to school with Michael Lembeck out here in California.
Yeah.
And they kept telling me how much I reminded them of Michael, even playing the same roles in the same plays.
Yeah.
And in the summer of '72, prior to my senior year of college, I was working with the Chicago Free Street Theater, performing all over Illinois, bringing free theater to communities that had never seen theater before, from affluent communities to communities that weren't as fortunate. And that fall of '72, Patrick Henry III, who was our artistic director, and by the way, the Free Street Theater was an outgrowth of the Illinois Arts Council, and Patrick was on the Arts Council. Well, he hooked up with the Beograd International Theater Festival and Pierre Cardin, and he brought the company in the fall of '72 to Yugoslavia. We toured all over Yugoslavia, played the Beograd International Theater Festival, Brussels, Pierre Cardin's theater, the Espace Cardin in Paris. And while doing that, I was working with a pal by the name of John Lansing, who years later wrote and produced Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah.
Well, in the interim, after we were finished with that tour with the Street Theater, I was given credit from Carnegie Mellon to do that. So the first half of my senior year, I was out working with the Street Theater in Europe. When we were through, I went back to school in January, and John got hired as an understudy in that national tour of Greece. He understudied Zuko and Kinnicky, Teen Angel. Mm-hmm. And when they came through Pittsburgh, John called and said, you got to come down and see the show. So I said, sure, fine. I'd love to see it. So I get out to see the show, and Michael Lembeck is in the show. He's playing Sonny. And he comes out on the stage backwards. And when he turns around, it was like watching myself, Tommy. That was like watching myself. So the guy did, in fact, look and act like me. And so the following day, and by the way, in that production at the time, Zuko was played by Jeff Conaway, and Travolta was playing Doody. Mary Lou Henner was playing Marty. Who else might you know? Jerry Zaks, the famous Broadway director, was playing Kinnicky. Mm-hmm. So I got on the phone, and I, of course, had not met any of those folks. Well, I knew Jeff, because Jeff and I were kids together. He was like Danny Zuko when I was growing up, Jeff Conaway. May he rest in peace. Yeah. And so I got on the horn with my agent the following day, and I said, God, there are roles in this for me, especially the one that Lembeck is playing, the role of Sonny. So I said, you got to get me an audition. Well, about a week later, my agent called and said, you got a general audition. You got to come into New York. So I flew into New York, and I auditioned. And a week later, I get a phone call from my agent. Michael Lembeck has broken his ankle at the end of the first act, jumping off a bench. Wow. In the We Go Together number, and they want to see you again to come up and replace him. So I flew back to New York again for the callback. and Pat Birch was running the callback. Pat Birch and she was choreographer, and also choreographed the film. She and I had worked together in 1967 and 68 with Your Good Man, Charlie Brown, the Boston company of Charlie Brown, where I played Schroeder. So she knew my work. Mm-hmm. And I auditioned and got the gig, but I couldn't go up right away to Toronto, where the company was, because I had 2 weeks of my senior year to finish. So they let me finish that, and then they brought me up to Detroit. And I basically understudied the understudy who had been put on as the role of Sonny. So if anybody else went down, he would slip into that role, and I slipped into Sonny. So for 3 weeks, I'm working my tail off, learning the... Well, I'm going to let that go. That's my other line. So I was working my tail off, learning that role really hard, and was in the wings, et cetera, et cetera. And I went to Jerry Zaks, who was playing Kaniki, and I said, hey, listen, would you mind feigning illness so that I can go on? And that way Tommy Gerard, who was the understudy, would go on as Kaniki, and then I'd slip into Sonny. He said, oh, yeah, sure, only if stage management says it's okay. Mm-hmm. So I knew that wasn't going to happen, and it didn't. He came back to me and said, nah, they said no. Well, that Saturday morning, May 19th, I get a phone call from the production stage manager, from the stage manager, Hal Halverson, who called and said, Jerry Zaks is sick. You're going on as Sonny this afternoon in the matinee. So on May 19th, now that was all probably set up, but they didn't want me to be part of that ruse, I'm sure, because they wanted to see what I could do. So May 19th of 1973, I stepped on stage at the Fisher Theater playing Sonny in the stage show of Grease. And 4 years to the day later, May 19th of 1977, I landed the role of Doody in the film.
Wow.
So, it's a little bit of a woo-woo experience. But I went on, and then Michael Lembeck actually was healed by that point. He'd been out for 5 weeks, and he came back into the show, and I, of course, was laid off. Mm-hmm. They had no use for me at that point anymore. So the rest of that summer, I went back to New York. This is post-college now. And by the end of that summer, Lembeck wanted to leave the show because the company had now come here to Los Angeles, and he was done. So they plugged me in, and I did the last 10 months of the show. I actually came and did one performance. They flew me out here to California to do the last matinee at the Shubert Theater, which is no longer. And then we flew to Chicago. I did 8 months there. And then 2 months in Toronto. They finished the national tour up in Toronto. So I finished it there. And that was in 73. Stayed back in New York in 73 to 76 when I had done a pilot in 76 that didn't sell. But the director of the pilot, Jerry Paris, who was the man who directed all the episodes of Happy Days.
Right.
He was Jerry the dentist on the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Right.
He said, come out to California. You can live with me and my family. You'll do well out here. And I contended that, I should never go out to California unless I had something to bring me out there. But I just packed up lock, stock, and barrel, and I took the chance. And within a week and a half, I landed a TV series with Don Rickles, CPO Sharkey.
Yeah.
And I was on top of the world until the following March of 77. I was written out. They didn't pick up my contract, and I was devastated and ran crying to Jerry Paris down at Paramount. He was doing Blansky's Beauties, I think was the name of the series. And he said, look, you can never tell what will happen. When I was your age, I was in The Untouchables with Robert Stack, and they wrote me out of that, and I thought my career was over. And the next thing you know, I landed Jerry the dentist in the Dick Van Dyke Show, and Sheldon Leonard offered me the chance to direct, and the rest is history. And I've told people before that, sure, the light at the end of that tunnel looks like a truck coming at you. I still was devastated. Well, had that not happened, Tommy, I wouldn't have been available to do Grease, because that then subsequently happened that following May. So, things happen for a reason, and then the rest is history, as they say.
Was making the Grease movie just as magical as the stage show?
It's fabulous. It was really great. And again, as I say, in that company that I joined in the last 10 months, we had Barry Bostwick had been flown out to do Zuko here in California, so I got to do a performance with him. And Maria Small, who was the original Frenchie, she'd come out at one point. Canning, Oh my gosh, that's terrible how I can't remember Canning's first name. He was the original Doody. Oh, that's just awful. Jimmy Canning. He came out to Chicago because he's an original Chicago-born fella. So I played opposite him. I was doing Sonny in the play, and Ray DeMattis was playing Roger. Of course, in the movie, the Roger character is basically what Michael Tucci is doing as Sonny, and the Doody character that I'm doing is basically Sonny, and the Putsy character is playing the role that basically is Doody. They wonked it all around. And then I got to do it with Jeff Conaway for I guess it was just one performance with Jeff. That was the first one that I'd done, May 19th of 73. But a whole bunch of people came through. Yes, making the movie was quite amazing. We never thought that, in fact, we were told that nobody from the film was going to be doing nobody from the play would be doing the film, and that wound up not to be the case, because Jeff played Zuko, of course, was playing Kinnicky in the movie, and Johnny was playing Doody. It was actually, built around him, of course, so he had done the original first national tour. And Michael Tucci was not my understudy, he was an understudy in the national tour that I did, and then subsequently he did it in New York for one or two performances. Mm-hmm. And Carol Culver, who was one of the 20 dancers, was in the chorus. I played Patty Simcox, actually, in the national tour. Mm-hmm. And who else from the Jamie Donnelly, who plays Jan in the movie. She was also in the stage show of Grease. So there were a couple of us that transitioned from the play to the film. And it was 15 weeks of a labor of love. We just had such a great time. We became a family, and we're still close to this day. In fact, last night I had dinner with Michael and Kelly, because we're on our way to Florida in December with John and Olivia. We're going to host a Grease sing-along in West Palm Beach, Tampa, and Jackson, December 13, 14, 15. We're so excited about that, because John and Olivia, this is the first time they're going to be doing something like this. And it'll be a whole thing with a Q&A and what they call a meet and greet, where they'll be able to meet everybody and shake hands and take photographs, and then see the sing-along. And again, they'll be able to ask questions afterwards. And it could be the beginning of more like that if it's a success. So we're really looking forward to that.
Oh, that's
so get your tickets, folks. I think it's Live Nation are the people that are producing this.
Yeah, me and my mom were, if we were financially well off, we would definitely go. My mom's wanted to be Mrs. John Travolta since she was like 20.
Mrs. John Travolta, that's adorable.
Yeah.
Well, Kelly Preston has that market cornered.
I know. How was the legendary Sid Caesar and Eve Arden on the movie?
They were fabulous. I had worked with Sid a couple times before. In fact, I directed Sid in 1970. I was 20 years old, and I had done the stage production of Oliver, as I mentioned, the original, and then I played the Artful Dodger in several stock companies. And what we would do, we would audition en masse. My agent, I beg your pardon, my manager at the time, Muriel Carl, had a whole stable of kids, and I would direct us in a mass audition. So I'd have Oliver sing Where Is Love, and then I came out as the Dodger, and where Dodger and Oliver meet each other at the Paddington Green scene, and that leads into the Consider Yourself number, and then we'd have the rest of the boys come in at that point. So we'd audition in mass for all these stock companies, and 3 summers in a row we got tours or we got regional companies. And so in the fourth summer, I was already too old to play the Dodger, but I auditioned anyway, and the artistic director of the St. Louis Muni Opera, Glenn Jordan, may he rest in peace, said, "Look, Barry, you're too old to play this role, but come and co-direct it." Sid Caesar's playing Fagin, and Karen Morrow is playing Nancy, and Michael Kirmoyan, the late Michael Kirmoyan, was playing Bill Sykes, who come out and co-direct with Billy Matthews. So I got to direct Sid out there in St. Louis as Fagin, and then went on. Sid then hired me and had me fly to Indianapolis and put the show up there. That's where the show was going to go next. So we already knew each other, and then got to work with him in the movie. I regret not spending more time with him. He was kind of reclusive, a great guy, and an amazing talent, but sort of kept to himself most of the time. And Eve was pretty much out there. She was great to work with. They all were. All the Gallus Ghostly and Daryl Zwirling, all of them. And then Sid and I actually appeared together. We didn't work together. We appeared together in the Munsters Revenge, which was the backdoor pilot for bringing the Munsters back. It was the first time we saw the Munsters in color. I was one of Marilyn's boyfriends, one of her many boyfriends.
Yep.
So, to meet the family.
I watch it every Halloween.
Do you?
Yeah, I watched it this past Halloween, as a matter of fact. I was like, oh, there's Barry. I got to ask him about that.
Yeah, with Fred Gwynn. I got to work with all the originals there. That was great fun.
Yeah, I interviewed Peter Fox, who played Marilyn's eventual love interest in it, who was the cop, and he told me he did not have a good experience making that because he just felt so. He knew that the writing was bad and it was cheesy, But he said he did love working with Fred Gwynn and Al Lewis.
Those were the two, and Bob Edmonton also. Those were the three that I loved working with. Yvonne DiCarlo was another story. She wasn't very available, but Fred, who I was told could be a real curmudgeon, he and I clicked. It was amazing. I was astounded. He had worked with a friend of mine, Joel Higgins. You might remember Joel Higgins he was the father on Silver Spoons.
Oh yeah.
And Joel actually was a Vince Fontaine towards the end of our run in Greece in the national tour. He actually left Greece to do Shenandoah, and that was the beginning of his big career. Mm-hmm. But Joel had worked with Fred I think in the Westbury Music Theater somewhere, did something with him. And so he hit me to Fred's likes and dislikes and told me all about Fred's work with children's books, an illustrator and such. And so I had something to talk to Fred about. And when I got onto the set, in fact, I guess it was a day before, I had a costume fitting, and I was at Universal. This was my girlfriend at the time. I said, let's go over to the set and see if we can meet some people. And as we walked in, there was Fred kind of propped up on a director's chair, on one of those tall telescope director's chair, with an air hose down his pants to cool off, because they didn't have cool suits at the time. And he was in that regalia, that Munsters, Herman Munster regalia. It was really hot, so it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I walked up to him and I said, "Hi, Mr. Gwynn. Gwynn, Mr. Gwynn. I'm from Barry Pearl. I'm playing Marilyn's boyfriend." And he looked at me and just went, I know, my God. So the following day, we got on the set, and once he saw that I knew my stuff, I think it impressed him. And then I started to talk to him about knowing Joel. And also something had happened with the special effects. Mm-hmm. If you recall, I have my glasses blown out because their dragon Spot blows fire at me while I'm sitting there, and the glasses crack. Well, they had these special effects glasses that had sugar glass kind of sandwiched together. And the hose they had hooked up would suck the outer glass into the inner glass. That's how they were originally going to do it. Mm-hmm. And it didn't work properly, so they were in the process of reversing it so it would blow it out instead. And I was sitting there when they were doing it, and one of the left eye went off accidentally. Could have blinded me. And it didn't, however. And Fred kind of saw me go through that. And between that and I think being impressed with my work, he really warmed up to me. And at one point, in between takes, he walked up to me and he said, and he's towering over me, because he's a tall guy to begin with, and then he's got these platform shoes. And he looked down at me and said, "Are you going to remember me when you're a big star?" And it was for real. I was, yeah. And I gave him a hug. Of course, my face was in his navel at that point in time. And we just hit it off. And then I gave him my autograph at the end of the shoot. It was very sweet. Very sweet. It was a great time doing it. Oh,
that's great. And the CPO Sharkey experience was good overall?
It was up to a point. Mm-hmm. I had been hired to play this. I'd replaced Jeffrey Kramer, who was the original Italian recruit. Mm-hmm. Jeffrey went on to produce Ally McBeal, and he was the deputy in the original Jaws, the one that throws up on the beach, and he became a big producer. And there are two stories here. Either Jeffrey was replaced, or he claims that he just didn't want to sign a 7-year contract. So he left. Whatever. It left it open for this character. His character's name was Pellegrini, and they hired me, and they called me Mignoni, again, the Italian recruit. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to be kind of the suave lover, Latin lover, in kind of like the Fonzie character, their Fonzie character. Mm-hmm. So when I got there for the first, I was on top of the world getting a series. And in the first episode, here was our dear late friend Richard Beauchamps playing the role of Rodriguez, the Puerto Rican recruit. Mm-hmm. And of course he spoke Spanish and he was hysterical. Well, that focus went on to him. And I thought, well, I thought I was supposed to be that guy. And then the next thing you know, Richard's in the second episode, in the third, and he became a regular. So when Don would go down the line berating the Jewish guy and the black guy and the Polish guy and the tall Norwegian guy and we'd come to the Italian guy, he wouldn't have anything funny to say. So I think they realized they may have made a mistake, because I'd say to Don, say something about my Italianness, and he would look at me and say, hey, I got family. He was close to Sinatra and so forth. So so I became really despondent, quite honestly. I wasn't happy. And they wrote me out, I think, because the character didn't work, because they replaced the character with a Greek guy. Apodaca was the name of the character, played by Phil Simms. And they also saw that I wasn't happy. So it was great working, I remained friendly with Don afterwards. I'm still very friendly with Peter Isaacson, and was with the late David Landsberg and Tommy Rubin, whose father produced it. Aaron Rubin produced it. Mm-hmm. They were writing for the guys. Aaron Rubin wrote for Sergeant Bilko, so they had that formula down perfectly. But they wanted to throw all the focus to Don, and Don would have liked the focus to have been thrown to us, because learning lines for Don was a bear. He would do it, but he would make him crazy. And they just didn't focus on the guys like they did on the Bilko show. So I just wasn't having a great time, and the next thing you know, I'm gone. But again, as I say, had that not happened, Greece would not have opened up. But I loved working with Don. He was so funny. And like I say, we remained friendly afterwards, and we would go up to Vegas and see him perform. In fact, we saw one of his last performances. I haven't seen this yet, but they have the DVD of the first season is out. Mm-hmm. And when they went to do the second, I'm not in the second season, but what they did before they put the second season DVD together, they had us come up to Vegas to watch him perform and then come backstage, and they filmed us backstage meeting with him. And that's on the DVD. Again, I haven't seen it, but it's a little featurette that's on that DVD.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I interviewed Jerry Paris's daughter, because I think he was a genius.
Julie? You interviewed Julie?
Yeah, Julie.
She was one of my oldest friends here. Because, again, I lived with them when I first came out. In fact, she introduced me to my first girlfriend out here. And we still are in touch, and Andy and Tony, her brothers. But
yeah, I'm trying to get Andy.
With Julie, we're Facebook friends. We haven't seen each other in so long. But great family. And both parents are gone. Her mother was also an angel. And Jerry he gave me my first breakout here, basically. Then I lived with them, and I was friendly with them all those years. I never did a Happy Days or a Laverne and Shirley. It just didn't feel right for me to say, hey, give me a gig. It just never felt right. They never hired me to do that. But that's sometimes, when you're a little too close, it's harder. I've always found it hard to suck up to people like that.
Yeah. Then comes a favorite of mine, Avenging Angel. How did you get cast in that?
Well, I auditioned for it, 1984, I think it was. And I went into audition, and I had developed a great relationship with the director, Robert Vincent O'Neill. And it was a great time working with Rory Calhoun and what's Susan's last name?
Susan Tyrell.
Last name. She was a character. I don't think she's
Susan Tyrell
with us anymore either. But it became really close to Rory.
Susan Tyrell,
exactly. Betsy Russell, of course. We're still in touch. Yeah, that was. I always wanted to do a bang bang shoot 'em up movie, and I guess I get cornered at the end by Timmy Razovich, who used to play for the Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Was he on the Eagles? I think he was, and he was a bad guy. And I'm in an elevator, one of those open air elevators in that wonderful building they shoot downtown all the time. I forget the name of the building. It's all wrought iron, and he bears down on me with a shotgun, and I got a gun, and I'm on the floor, and I shoot at him. The bullet ricochets and hits me in in the thigh, and I then shoot him, I guess, again. And the first bullet ricochets, and the second bullet hits him, and I kill him. He goes through a glass window. But when the bullet hits me, it was an improv moment, and I yell out, "Medic!" And they kept it in the movie. Fun. I helped design that costume also, and the makeup that I did was like Kiss makeup that I had on. Johnny Glitter was the character.
Yeah. Also, Ozzie Davis and Robert F. Lyons.
Right, Robert Lyons, who was wonderful. He gets killed at the end, and it's of course him that I see being killed, and I'm a witness as a result. So the bad guys are after me the entire film to try to do me in. You know.
Yeah.
Great fun.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him on soon too. He's also really busy because he teaches acting in L.A.
That's right. It's been a long time since I've seen him. But I just worked with him that one night where I come up on him, and after he's been shot, and he says, "Angel." Okay, man, I'm no angel. And I go running away, and then of course they seek me out, and Rory and Susu and Betsy protect me while the bad guys are after me. It was great fun, doing chases and gun battles and such. I always wanted to do something like that.
Yeah. Any good stories about Annihilator?
Wow, the Annihilator. I was back east during the holidays with the girl that became my first wife, and had to leave a day early because I got this Annihilator gig. Mm-hmm. And the choice was either she stayed in New York for an extra day and then went back to Toronto where she lived, or left right away, or came out and stayed with me for 2 weeks. And that's basically what she did, and then we eventually got married. So Annihilator annihilated me for a little bit. Not much that I remember other than Mark David Chapman was the name of the...
Mark Lindsay Chapman.
Mark Lindsay Chapman was the name of the Annihilator. He was the lead. And they wanted him to play Lennon, I think, in a television movie about John Lennon.
Yeah.
But because his name was Mark Chapman, they didn't do it. They gave him I think that's how he got the Annihilator. That was the consolation prize, if I'm not mistaken. And then on the Annihilator, or on the Lennon project, there was also a Mark Chapman that was a cinematographer or something crazy like that, or the director or something like that. But I think that the Annihilator was his consolation prize. Mm-hmm. And I don't much remember it. I'm trying to remember what I even did in it. Was I a lawyer? What was I? Do you recall?
I think you were a lawyer. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Nor have I. I get a residual of like 30 cents every once in a while. But I haven't seen it. I think that was a Universal project, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was a Universal.
Yeah.
Catherine Mary Stewart, she's a frequent guest on the show. She's such a sweetheart.
Yeah, I can't recall who it was that I had worked with. But I know that I worked with Mark, I believe. But, gosh, you're pulling these things out of the air. Well, you're probably looking at a resume of some sort. That's where you're getting these from. So there are all kinds of stories with each and every one of those entries, I'm sure.
Yeah. So you just got done doing a play. Do you still enjoy doing theater?
Very much so. In fact, I'm doing a play right now. I'm doing The Man Who Came to Dinner, playing the role of Banjo, the Jimmy Durante role from the movie. And Harpo Marx actually played the role in the stage play. And we're in rehearsal for that. And that goes up December 6th, I want to say. I'll do it for the first, third, and fourth weekends, because that middle weekend, like I said, I'm going to Florida. Mm-hmm. And then, though the show plays through the 12th of January, I'll be leaving to do a musical version of To Sir with Love. That what's his name? Listen to me. Nigel Lithgow's son, Chris Lithgow. Nigel brought you American Idol, and Chris, So You Think You Can Dance. That's their shows.
Yeah.
Chris, who I've been doing these pantos with for the last bunch of years. It's a British form of a musical. He has written and is producing the To Sir with Love stage musical down at Laguna. So it looks like I'm going to go down there and do that January and February. And then beyond that, I guess in the spring we'll start out with Joey's inclusion film school, the summer film camps, and in the spring and then the summer, and that'll take me into the next year, and so forth and so on, as long as these creaky old bones can take it.
Yeah, do you find that doing theater is more liberating than on-camera stuff?
Not necessarily. It's, the difference for me, you hear the immediate response of the crowd, whether it's laughter or crying or applause, and that's very gratifying. And with film, of course, you sit back and wait till it's all done and you see how people react. But I'm still very involved in both, and I love both of them, and the TV screen as well, for different reasons. I have a film out now that's called The Silent Natural. I have a small role in it about the first deaf baseball player, William Dummy Hoy.
Yeah.
I went to a screening of that in Oshkosh. It was very well received, and we're hoping to get that a distribution deal for that, because it's an important film, and we want to get William Hoy inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame as well. But yeah, still doing live theater and film and television and teaching. It's just been a gift all the way around,
Yeah.
And I'm just enjoying life, as best I can, in light of the fact that our beautiful pussycat, who I'm stroking right now, she's sick right now, and we're going to get better, because we love her. She's our daughter. She's our fuzzy daughter.
Yeah.
And so, I'm just enjoying myself. My gosh, there's a huge package at my door. I haven't the foggiest idea what this is. In fact, there are two of them. You see, I'm getting gifts all over the place.
Yeah.
I have no idea what. Maybe this is for my wife. I don't know. But anyhow, what else good can I tell you, Tommy?
I just wanted to bring up, The Silent Natural. My friend Kathleen Kinmont was in that movie, and she's brought it up the last couple of times she's been on. It's kind of a passion project for her. I had her on a couple of weeks ago, and she told me she saw Grease in the theater when it first came out, and she had no idea that in the future she would marry Lorenzo Lamas for a brief time.
Lorenzo, what a great guy he is. But yes, that's right. She's in the film. I recall now that you had mentioned that. So yeah, it's a wonder. I hope you get a chance to see the film. It's really, really, really wonderful.
I really do want to see it. Yeah. Do you know where it's available?
Well, like I say, they're looking for a distribution deal, and they're playing festivals right now.
Mm-hmm.
What most of your listeners probably don't know is that unless a studio like Paramount, like 20th Century Fox, like Universal, NBC Universal, if you do a studio film, it's a lot easier for them to get a film distributed. They go to Cannes, and they go to all the film festivals, or maybe not even a film festival. They shoot it and they distribute it. They get a distribution deal right away.
Right.
Well, with independent films, it's a whole other deal. You got to get people interested in it. And a company like Lionsgate sees it and says, all right, we'll rent out theaters all over the country, and we'll exhibit it. And that's how they'll make their money. It's very tough. It's not as easy as people think, and there's a lot of content out there, both on the silver screen and, of course, streaming and such, So there's a lot of competition, to say the least,
Yeah, I mean, it's weird how movies are being distributed now. I worry about it in the future, because the whole theater system now is all blockbuster movies, and you can't even watch a great little independent film at a theater no more. Yeah,
I know. See, but there are art houses that exhibit them,
There is.
But it's just not as easy. It's an uphill battle. It's a wonder how anything gets produced to begin with, and then beyond that, have it be distributed. It's amazing, just amazing.
Yeah. Well, Barry, I thank you so much for coming on today. This was great.
My pleasure. It's been great talking to you, Tommy, and I hope that your listeners enjoyed. And again, things to look out for: The Silent Natural. Also, I'm in a web series called Boomers. The second season of that is going to be dropping soon. It's a very funny web series, and 7 minutes a piece each episode at the most. So that's fun for you to look for, and that's a musical too. We we have a little rock band in there. All these old geezers looking to do something in their lives after retirement. So we put together a rock band. It's very funny. So there's that to look forward to, and look out for To Sir With Love, the musical that's going to be hopefully moving from Laguna to bigger and better venues. Well, I shouldn't say better. Laguna's a pretty darn great venue, but bigger venues, New York specifically, is the aspiration. And also look out for Carol of the Bells, Joey Travolta's film, which I had mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. That should be coming your way soon. So thanks for the opportunity for allowing me to plug those projects as well, my friend.
Oh, my pleasure. And keep doing what you're doing with Joey's group there, because that's God's work, like I said.
You're absolutely right. Thank you, and I promise you that I will.
Absolutely. Well, you have yourself a great day, sir.
You too, Tommy. Thanks again for the opportunity to do your podcast. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
It sure was. My pleasure, sir. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Barry Pearl. Ain't he a cool dude? My God, great man, helping the disabled act. That is just amazing. Like I said, it's God's work, and I'm very fortunate I got to interview him. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes. Tell me more, tell me more.